Anyhow, it's because I had a heart attack that I became acquainted with a cardiologist, namely Dr. Gitter, and he is a heart doctor. And among his special interests is the relationship between diet and health, particularly heart health. He was born in Madison, received his MD from the University of Wisconsin in Madison, received a fellowship from the celebrated Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and did his residency and internship at the University of Minnesota. He's a strong advocate for diet and exercise as a way to a heart-healthy lifestyle, and we can tell that he practices what he preaches from the fact that he enjoys biking and cross-country skiing and has completed 6 Ironman triathlons. For those, apparently several of you are very initiated to that, but for the uninitiated, an Ironman triathlon consists of a 2.4-mile swim, a 112-mile bike race, and a marathon run, which is 26.2 miles, all of which have to be completed within 17 hours. I mean, I couldn't walk that far. I would crawl that far. I don't know. Anyhow, he's married to Cecilia and has a 13-year-old daughter who is quite a sprinter. And I turn it over to Dr. Gitter.
Thank you, Wilson. And can you guys hear me okay now? And to the Winchester Academy for asking me to come and speak to you. I had the pleasure of meeting a number of the Winchester members at dinner down the street at Simpson's, and I want you to know that they ate pretty healthy tonight. I'll be talking to a few of them at the end of the talk. All right. So, and I guess the only thing you could say about doing 6 Ironman triathlon is maybe it calls into question my judgment. I'm not sure. So, but I try to practice what I preach. And one of the things I've always thought is I'm never going to ask a patient to do something that I can't do better because it's not fair. And so I'm trying to be a little bit tough on some of my patients. You know, I don't accept that they're too busy to take care of themselves because I have a busy schedule and I can work these things in, but it has to become a priority. But one of the things that has become crystal clear to me over the last 20 years is that we have lost the connection in society between how critically important it is what we put into our mouths and our general health throughout our lives. And the greatest misfortune, I think, that exists today is the fact that when we eat a bad quality meal, we don't get sick right away. If we did, we wouldn't have the healthcare problem we have in the United States today. The problem with bad food and bad eating is it makes you sick, but it makes you sick over years. It doesn't make you sick over days. And so we don't connect the dots. We eat badly for months and for years, and we get sick, and we don't realize how much our diet led to our illnesses. And absolutely in cardiovascular diseases, but I think in other diseases as well. And why is it so important to eat healthy? I'm gonna show you. Excuse me. Okay, this is what we're trying to avoid. I'm going to show you what a heart attack looks like. A heart artery, cholesterol building up over months and years. The cholesterol plaque ruptures into the bloodstream, causing a sudden blood clot in the heart artery, and you go from feeling fine to having crushing chest pain, and you are on your way to the emergency room. And this, if you survive the sudden blockage. And this can also be happening on a micro level repeatedly. I call it the snap, crackle, pop. And the truth is, there's someone here tonight that this is happening to in this room. Okay. Right now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to have everybody on this side of the room, just raise your hand. Okay. Right now, there's at least this many people in this room today that have heart artery blockage. 1/2 of adults. Now, the problem is, I don't know if it's you guys or it's you guys. In fact, I know about a few of you because I know you professionally. But 1/2 of all adults in the United States have heart disease at some level or another, and the great majority of you don't even know whether or not you have it. And remind me before the end of my talk, we have a phenomenal, very simple screening test that you can have done for a small expense out of pocket that will tell us today, do you or do you not have artery blockage? And if you have it, is it mild, moderate, or severe? Now, if you've had a bypass, if you've had a stent, if you've had a heart cath, and you know that answer, you don't need the test because you already know that answer. Okay. So let me just go ahead and play this for one more time because it goes by fast. This is a heart attack. A stroke. Same process from a cholesterol rupture, but it's in the brain. This is happening in the heart. This is one of the 3 arteries that supplies blood to the heart. You see the red blood cells going down. For years, this cholesterol has been building up. It suddenly ruptures into the artery, triggering a sudden blood clot blockage of the heart artery. This is an acute heart attack. And it doesn't have to shut down the entire artery. It can be a small erosion and injury to the inside of the blood vessel, also resulting in some new blood clot blockage, which will slowly, gradually progress over time. So if you know someone or you yourself have had a heart attack, this is exactly what happened to you. And if it happens in the brain, it can cause an acute thrombotic stroke. So that's what we're here to talk about. We're talking about how hopefully you can take something away from tonight and not let this happen to you or make it a lot less likely to happen to you. So for those of you that didn't know, the topic tonight is called Death by Sugar and Other Health and Nutritional Issues that Confuse Us and Make Us Sick. I was talking to Dr. Salen at dinner tonight, and I said one of the great challenges we have today is with the explosion of access to information, we can know more than we ever have. You can become the most best educated patients in the world, but the problem is you got to figure out where to pick and choose your information from. And the problem is we are inundated with misinformation. We're inundated with the life-saving, I call it the life-saving food of the month. Every single month there's a new one thing that if you eat, you're going to be healthy. And I got to tell you, there's no such thing as one food that you're ever going to eat that's going to save your life and make healthy. But there are a lot of great foods that are going to do it. So what we're going to do tonight is talk a little bit about the primary thing that makes us sick in the United States, and I believe is that the absolute source of obesity in the United States, which is refined sugar. And in the process, we're going to talk about a lot of the other very common food myths that exist and see if I can't maybe clear up a few misconceptions for you. And then your assignment at the end of the night is going to go out and spread the word. Spread the word. Because it's time to get rid of the misinformation out there. And as we do that, we all live healthier and we live longer and we dramatically cut our health expenses in our lifetimes. Can you hear me without this? I'm pretty loud. Can you hear me in the back? Because this is going to squawk every time I change a slide. I'm going to turn this off. Okay. I've never been accused of being overly quiet. Okay. For the first time in the history of mankind, heart disease, diabetes, and cancer now pose a greater health risk than infectious diseases for the entire world. I mean, when you were kids, the #1 killer in the world was infectious disease from all over the world. That has dramatically changed. Infectious disease are no longer the primary source of premature death and illness in the entire world, and certainly not in the United States. The #1 cause of illness and death in the United States is heart disease, mitigated to a great degree by diabetes, hyperlipidemia, and hypertension. And we're talking about 35 million deaths annually. Every single country in the world which has adapted our Western diet, dominated by low-cost, highly processed food, i.e., hey, it's really convenient, it's really fast, it's pre-mixed and it's in a box and I can make it in 5 minutes. How convenient is that? has gone on to have dramatic rises in obesity and heart disease. And the greatest example of that in the last decade is the entire country of China, where 10 or 15 years ago, heart disease was rare and has now become the #1 disease in the entire country of China in the matter of less than a single generation. And it's happening as they're turning their bicycles in and trading them in for cars and eating like us, fast foods, processed foods. There are now in the world 30% more people that are obese than there are undernourished. First time in the history of the world, there are more obese people than there are undernourished people in the world. We've never seen anything like this. And you already know from reading the newspapers and listening to the news that it's filtering down in the United States all the way down into our schools. We've never been busier in the field of cardiology, and I got to tell you, the next generation of cardiologists are going to be busier than I, because we've never seen so much diabetes in preteens and teenagers and young adults as we have today. And I can't imagine what it's going to be like to be a cardiologist 25 years from now practicing. So. But it's not just about weighing too much. There are 20% of people who are technically obese by our official BMI definitions that are actually normal metabolism, normal lifestyles. And there's 40% of normal weight people who can develop diabetes, hypertension, and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So it's not just a matter of am I carrying extra weight on my frame or not. It comes back to a very large degree to what am I putting in my mouth on a day-to-day basis. And that's what I'm going to try to convince you about tonight. There are 4 maps of the United States up here in the upper left-hand corner, 1990, 1995, and 2005. And the more blue you see, the more healthy people there are in the map, and the more tan and rust that you see, the more unhealthy each of the states become. And we've now, if I could now interpose on here 2013, which the data have just been released, every single state in the United States now has a greater than 25% obesity in the entire country. People used to go, oh yes, those Wisconsinites, it's all the brats and cheese. It's not. And in fact, Wisconsin, although we have a healthcare problem with our eating, we don't even rate in the top 15 in the United States anymore. For reasons that I assume are cultural, the worst spots in the United States are now the Atlantic Gulf Coast states. Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama have the worst obesity and health-related problems in the country. And the one state that's still a bit of an outlier is Utah, still, and partly because they have such a low smoking rate in that state. But, so why is this happening? I think this is to a large degree why. In the last 50 years, sugar consumption, simple sugar, has tripled in 50 years, dominated by high fructose corn syrup. The average person in this room today eats 120 to 130 pounds of refined sugar a day. A year. A year. But that's 22 teaspoons of sugar a day for the average American. And we're not even singling out those of you with sweet tooth. And it can get worse, okay? And most of us have no idea that we're eating that much simple sugar. Well, why is that a problem? Well, let's go on. Simple sugar has lots of bad health consequences to us. Increased sugar, and we'll talk a little bit more. High sugar diets cause increased lipids, cholesterol values, and it messes with our pancreas and our insulin and the ability of insulin to work and causes adult onset diabetes. Okay? It increases uric acid in our bloodstreams, which drives blood pressures up. It increases triglycerides, which make us more prone to pancreatitis. It increases the amount of fat that we accumulate in our liver, The typical person on a high sugar diet is found to have 30% more fat in their liver than someone who eats a diet low in refined sugar. The obesity that goes along with high sugar diets creates insulin-dependent diabetes, type 2 adult onset diabetes. I'm not going to make you raise your hands. I'm positive we have people like that in the room here. It increases glucose production, and it causes increased and accelerated aging to the cells. So the high content of sugar in our diet is causing multiple specific healthcare problems to us that all ultimately feed back to that original picture I showed you, building up of cholesterol in the arteries and leading to premature heart attacks and premature strokes. Well, what's changed? Let's go back a lot of generations and think about, where did our ancestors get sugar from? What was the original source of refined sugars for our ancestors? Well, if they were lucky enough in midsummer or fall to find a beehive and they could figure out a way to get past the bees, they could intermittently find some honey. Okay? And there were certain times in the harvest season where they could find certain fruits or vegetables that had high sugar contents. But for the majority of the time, our ancestors did not have access to refined sugars every day. Certainly not 22 teaspoons of refined sugar per day. So we were never set up to be sugar machines. Okay? And we talked about the incredible daily consumption of sugar by our current population. Well, what's the problem with all this sugar? When we eat sugar, it suppresses a hormone called ghrelin, which is one of the things that's released to tell us when we're eating a healthy diet and we're starting to fill up. There's a hormone that feeds back to our brain that tells us if we're fed or not, how hungry should we be. Sugar and ghrelin just don't communicate with one another. So you can have ghrelin, which is telling your brain, I'm hungry, at a time when you're packing your body full of sugar, and the hormone ghrelin's not registering the fact that you're putting in hundreds of calories into your body, and your brain's not registering that, and it says, hey, I'm still hungry. So the first problem with sugar is we tend to overeat it, and there's no natural appetite suppression that goes along with simple sugar consumption. Sugar also interferes with another hormone called leptin, which feeds back to the brain and says, hey, we're getting full. You can slow down now. So not only, when you're eating sugar, not only does your brain not realize, your brain keeps thinking you're hungry, but it never realizes how many calories you've gotten. It continues to say, keep eating. We're not recognizing that you're putting anything worthwhile or wholesome into your body. As of today, 75% of all healthcare dollars are spent treating what we call the metabolic syndrome. And that is some combination of diabetes, cholesterol, hypertension, and obesity. That cost might be specifically treating the diabetes. It might be money being spent to treat you for your heart attack or your stent or your bypass after things got out of control and I had to get involved with your care. But the great majority of the health dollars spent today are directly related to the metabolic syndrome and the effect that it has on your heart and your blood vessels. Did you know that today 25% of young men and women are actually rejected for military service because of obesity-related reasons? You should be concerned and outraged that that's happening with what should be our youngest and fittest adults in society today. So, we're going to intermittently slide off the path of sugar, and we're going to talk about some, what I call my myth busters. So, these are true and false questions for you, and I'm going to ask you the question. You don't have to tell me the answer. Think about it in your head, and I'll show you the answer. So, myth buster number 1, 2. Sea salt is healthier than table salt? Is sea salt healthier than table salt? It's false. Brace yourselves. All salt originated from the sea. But sometimes the sea moved backwards and left deposits of salt in the land that made it easier for Mortons to dig out of the earth. The only difference between sea salt and the salt dug out of the earth is salt dug out of the earth has iodine added to it because we live in what used to be called the Goiter Belt. And the salt that's evaporated from the sea actually has a few extra trace minerals, but it also has some of the pollution that naturally lives in the ocean. So I can't tell you how often I have my patients show up and say, you are going to be so pleased with me, I'm not eating salt anymore, I'm eating healthy salt, I'm eating sea salt. And it happens every single day, and this has been absolutely the most masterful marketing in the last 5 years, is the idea that sea salt is somehow healthier than table salt. Sodium chloride is sodium chloride, and the truth is, as an adult population in the United States, the average, we're not even talking about salt tonight officially, we ought to eat 3 times more salt than the federal government's ultimately going to recommend. And if you have high blood pressure, you're probably eating 4 or 5 times more salt than you should. And if you have congestive heart failure, you're eating 5 times more salt than the typical diet that you have been. The average American should be eating less than 2 grams of salt per day. You can now get a single serving of fast food, a single serving of fast food that can have 5,000 to 6,000 milligrams of salt in a single serving. Salt is everywhere, as bad, almost as bad as sugar. And like sugar, the more you eat, the less of it you taste, and the more you eat. And we love our salt because it makes stuff taste better. I don't blame Pillsbury for putting salt in everything because their job is to make money. Their job is not to make you healthy. Don't ever forget that. There are very few food companies out there that are responsible to make you healthy. Their responsibility is to make money. And they do that selling you anything that you will buy. So you are ultimately responsible to wade your way through the quagmire and recognize that half of the stuff at the grocery store is very unhealthy for us. Mythbuster. Energy drinks are less harmful than soda. True or false? False, yeah. Absolutely, this is false. But the energy companies have absolutely convinced us that if you want to be a successful athlete, if you're not drinking sport drinks, not only are you a loser, but you're slow and you're going to be last place every time. And in fact, the sports drinks have more sugar in them than most soft drinks do. They are more harmful for teeth and tooth decay. And in fact, there's only one product that's ever been proven to enhance athletic performance, and it has nothing to do with sugar, it's caffeine. So if you're an athlete, or if you like to get out like I do and pedal my bicycle on a beautiful day, and partway through I want to get a little boost for my activity, have a cup of coffee. We actually carry chocolate-covered espressos on a 100-mile bike ride to give ourselves a boost. But there's very little healthy about sport drinks. If you got kids or grandkids that are hooked on sport drinks, you start moving them away from sport drinks. Okay, diet soda is harmless. Yeah. Well, how can that be? What can be wrong with it? There's no sugar in it, right? It's just, what is it? It's food coloring and it's flavor, right? How can that be bad for you? False. Aspartame and sucralose produces food urges. This is fantastic. They've been doing studies that show that, your typical person who consumes diet soda says, well, I drink diet soda because I want to lose weight. I don't want all those extra calories. But here's what happens. The artificial sweeteners are so good that you put it in your mouth registers something amazingly sweet, and your brain goes, sugar is coming. We are going to have a sugar party. And your brain waits. And it waits, and no sugar shows up. and it waits. And after a while, we've learned after a 2 or 3 or 4 hour delay, the brain says, I'm sick of waiting. You promised me sugar, go find me sugar. And diet sodas have now shown to artificially induce appetite in a delayed fashion by about 3 or 4 or 5 hours after you drink the artificial sweeteners. And diet soda drinkers are gaining almost as much excess weight as regular soda drinkers are. Now let me ask you this. If your weight is, if you consume the exact number of calories that you burn and your weight is stable, and you add 1 can of sugared soft drink a day for 1 year, how much weight do you gain?
15 pounds.
12 to 15 pounds. 1 extra can of soda a day. As of today, what does the average American drink for soft drinks per day? 2 cans of soft drink per day for the average American. Now you're sitting there going, well, I don't drink any. Some of you are. All that means is some people out there drinking a heck of a lot more than 2 cans a day. I got patients who drink 12 cans a day, regular or diet. And it's very hard to get them to just stop it once. You literally have to wean people off of soda. And the current data says it takes about 2 months to wean somebody, 2 to 3 months to wean somebody off soft drinks. Because there's almost an addictive component to the sugar buzzes and sugar high you get from it. It's very hard to just, if you're a soft drink drinker, it's very hard to just go home and stop today. You have to work at it for several months to get it out of the repertoire. The best thing that I've seen the Appleton schools do in my days in the Fox Cities is soft drinks and soft drink machines are no longer allowed in the Appleton School District. I hope you have something similar here. I don't know. And if it were up to me, all soft drinks would go away. Now, I have to admit, the things that someone like Mayor Bloomberg does where he literally wants to ban the big drinks is, I hope it doesn't come to the government telling us we can't drink it, but we need to get the word out. Common sense says these things should go away. And the only reason they're everywhere you go is because people are willing to buy them. And the companies that make them make lots of money on them. And what we need to do as a society, drink less, tell them we want healthier drinks, and force them to provide us with healthier drinks. Low-fat foods are better for you. True or false? How can that be false? How can that possibly be false? Low-fat foods are good for you. Don't you sometimes pick up foods at the grocery store because it says low-fat on it?
No carbs.
I believe that part of the obesity problem in the United States is caused by the doctors. And I'm one of the people that's responsible because what have we told you for 15 years? You go to the doctor for 15 years and we've said, don't eat fat, don't eat fat, don't eat fat, don't eat fat, right? You've all heard that in your lifetimes. You've heard it on the news, you've heard it from your doctors, you've heard it from your nurses. And you know what? You guys listen. The typical American today eats less fat than we did 20 years ago. Yet, the obesity problem is the worst in the history of the United States because we were wrong. I was wrong. All the doctors were wrong. We should have said, get rid of the unhealthy saturated fats and the trans fats and focus on the healthy fats. The fats that are the olive oils and the oils and nuts and the healthy oils which our body needs for good health and which tells us from an appetite standpoint that we're well fed and we should stop eating. And so you guys did such a good job listening to us that we now have a healthcare crisis because you listen to your doctors. It's crazy. But I absolutely believe that we are to a large degree responsible for this problem. Because what did you do? You gave up fats and you replaced it with what I call in Wisconsin the big 3 of weight gain. Breads, pastas, potatoes. That's what's making America sick. Some of you are rice eaters. As a culture, we don't need nearly as much rice as we do breads, pastas, and potatoes. When you put breads, pastas, or potatoes or rice in your mouth, all your body sees is dissolved simple sugar. Now, I already know some of you are going, oh, no, not me because I eat whole wheat bread. And I go, great, you're eating sugar bread with little hunks of seed, chips and hunks of seed and fiber and grain in it. But it's still, at the end of the day, it's still sugar bread. That's what's killing America. All the sugar in our foods and the processed foods and all the simple sugar carbohydrates that we're eating. That's what's making America sick. Low fat is created at the grocery store by loading up with salt and inexpensive sugars, primarily corn-based sugars. The New England Journal of Medicine in 2008 published a fantastic study that showed people who actually switched to low-carb diets lost 62% more weight than those who tried to lose weight cutting fat. Makes sense because you already eat less fat than you ever did. So you can't expect to be losing lots of weight by saying, I'm going to cut out all the fatty foods. You want to lose weight, get rid of the simple sugar carbohydrates. The fastest way to lose weight is get rid of the sugar. Get rid of the simple sugar foods. All right, trans fat-free foods are actually trans fat-free. So when you buy, trans fats are bad. Anytime you see trans fats on the label, put it back on the shelf. Don't eat it. Okay, and now you can go to the store, and the companies have figured out, if I write trans fat-free on it, it makes it easier for you guys to buy your food, right? So doesn't it make sense that if trans fats are the bad food, and the food says trans fat-free, that ought to be a relatively healthier thing to buy, right? In theory it works, but there's a problem with this. The FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, allows you to put trans fat free on the label as long as there's no more than 500 milligrams of trans fat in the food. So trans fat free doesn't even mean it's trans fat free anymore, and you got to still turn over and read the labels. Now, reading labels gets old. They're tiny little prints, they're hard to read, but the truth is you have to gain some basic abilities to look at and read a label. If you want to be healthy in this country, you have to be able to read a simple basic food label. Okay, how about this? How many times you go to the store now and it says natural? The word natural. That's got to be good for you, right? How can something that's natural be bad for you? Okay? This is all over the grocery store. The next time you go to the grocery store, remember some of the things I've talked and just wander up and down the shelves and randomly grab products off the label and look at them. And you are going to be shocked how much sugar, how much trans fat, how the contents of the food that you've been buying just because you're in the habit of buying it, and start to read the labels and realize how much of this stuff is bad for you.
Well, the sugar's natural. Chemicals are natural.
But I'm telling you why, in fact, the amount of sugar that we're eating is bad for us. Okay. The FDA, the problem with the word natural on the label is the FDA has never made a serious attempt to define what natural means. So any company in the country could put natural on the label. You'll find natural on 7-Up. You'll find the word natural on Cheetos bags now, on Raisin Bran, which is sugar-covered, simple grain sugars, cereals with raisins. Pure sugar-coated breakfast cereal all has the word natural on it. So you can't just look at the word natural and go, oh, this, I'm off the hook. This is good for me. You're starting to think, boy, there's nothing left for me to eat out there. Look at this, eggs, egg yolks. Egg yolks raise your cholesterol. That's true. Well, that has to be true. We've all been told that our whole lives, right?
I'm living proof of that.
Yeah, that's false. There's actually no link between egg consumption and heart disease. And in fact, a healthy egg for breakfast gives you a source of excellent protein in the morning, which feeds back to the whole system that says, I've gotten a good quality meal, I'm satisfied, I'm not hungry, fry it up in a little olive oil, and you've gotten yourself actually quite a healthy breakfast. There, so I gave you one food back. How about this? When I'm stressed out, if I eat junk food, I feel better. Listen, there's people that will tell me this, that eating junk food helps them when they're stressed out. And when I eat my junk food, I actually feel better. There are a lot of people that come into the office and tell me this. And that's false. It turns out that people with the highest consumption of junk food also have the highest levels of depression in our society today. And I don't think that there's a coincidence. I don't think that's a coincidence. We haven't tied the exact biochemical connection between the crappy chemicals and the crappy components of junk food and depression, but we know that depression is a chemically mediated problem with the neural sensors in the brain between brain cells to a large degree. So it's not a coincidence, but the exact tie-in and what the chemical mechanism is between the junk food. This isn't a coincidence. How about this? Chocolate's bad for you. Yeah, thank God. This is not. I'm a chocoholic. And if you guys are too, that's great. And so I promised I wasn't going to take everything good away from you today. Okay? Chocolate improves blood flow in your body. Endorphins are a chemical that your brain releases that makes you feel good. The runners will say at the end of a really hard run, I have this calmness and this happy feeling. That's from endorphin release from vigorous exercise. Chocolate raises good cholesterol, HDL, and in fact, the darker the chocolate, the healthier it is for you. The main difference between dark chocolate and milk chocolate is milk chocolate has a higher sugar content. But my suggestion is, you know, enjoy a little bit of chocolate once in a while. It's good for you. Maybe every day. In moderation. How about this? Granola's good for you. How can granola be? They're not all false. Okay. So the answer here is maybe. Maybe. It depends on who makes it. It depends on what they put in it. Oats, grains, and nuts are fantastic for you, but if they tie the whole thing together with grams and grams and grams of simple refined sugars, suddenly it's not so healthy for you anymore. Again, and the very best is to make your own. Absolutely. And you totally control what goes into it. I should have brought it. My wife makes the best homemade granola in the universe. And I wish I would have brought a recipe to share with you.
Email it to us.
Yeah, you know what? If I can email it to one of the Winchester people, they can pass it out the next time. And it's simple. But here's a case where a product that intuitively ought to be healthy for you may or may not be healthy. There's another product that's been found in general to be incredibly healthy for you, yogurt, which is now, some of the yogurts are having so much simple refined sugar packed into them in the form of fruit juices and artificial fruit flavorings that they're literally becoming unhealthy for you. But the yogurts that are predominantly protein and healthy fat-based are incredibly healthy for you. They have been shown to help you reduce weight and to reduce appetite urges as long as they're not filled with sugar. Be careful. You know, one of the most popular yogurts in the country now is You'll Play with the fruit bottoms. That is one of the highest sugar contents of all the yogurts in the grocery store.
What's what they call Greek yogurt? Sugar for a yogurt thing like that. What would it be? How many grams?
It ought to be under a gram or two. Yeah.
Under what?
Under a gram or two. Remember, you're eating 22 teaspoons of sugar a day right now on average. But what you want to do is you want to go through the yogurt counter and find that which has the lowest sugar content that you still like. Or if you really like them sweet, add your own natural fruits to them. And don't depend on the company to put refined, processed sugar into the bottom of the cup for you. Put your own fruit. I'm going to hold questions to the end. Because Dr. Hathaway threatened me if I run late in the talk because he wants a question and answer period. So we're gonna keep going here. Okay. Best source of potassium is bananas. True. You've all heard that. Well, it is a great source of potassium, but it's not the only source of potassium. A banana, 422 milligrams, average size banana. 5 apricots equal that. 2 cups of cantaloupe. 1 stalk of broccoli. 1/4 of a cup of sun-dried tomatoes. Potassium is a very healthy component that we have a tendency to undereat in this society. Bananas are a great source. They're not the only great healthy source. Here's a harder one. Meat's bad for you. This is a harder one. And I got to tell you, this story keeps evolving. And story has evolved again within the last month. And some of you may have heard about some of the research coming out of the Cleveland Clinic. Well, in general, I'm going to tell you that eating good, clean cuts of beef in general do not cause heart disease in moderation. Okay? Processed meats have been strongly linked with heart disease. And here's a general rule for you to follow with all the foods that we eat. The more processed the food is, the less healthy it gets. The more processed food is, the less healthy it gets. Every time man tries to manipulate the food of the food sources, that less healthy it becomes because of the additives and things they put in to make it visually appealing, make it appeal to your senses, to get you to buy it. And there's entire books out now about the psychology of the big food companies have figured out that there are ways that they can make food artificially attractive to you and I, so we buy it more. So there's an entire field of food psychology that's developing that the big corporations get and understand and employ in the way they package and the way they prepare their foods for us. You need to be careful about that. Now, in general, an occasional piece of beef does not cause heart disease. Okay? Now, there's new information coming out, and we're just getting the tip of the iceberg, and the work's predominantly coming out of Cleveland Clinic right now, and that is that the bacteria, our stomachs and our intestines are full of bacteria, but it turns out that we all don't have identical bacteria. The type of diet that we have impacts the type of the bacterial flora in our digestive tracts. And people that consume very large amounts of meat and processed meat products all the time develop an unhealthy type of bacteria that breaks down the meat protein, particularly something called creatine, into an unhealthy inflammatory type product that gets in the bloodstream and is enhancing artery blockage. If you don't eat meat very often and you don't have that bacteria, it would appear that you don't create the breakdown products from beef that are harmful for you. And so at the moment, if I had given this talk 6 months ago, I would have said to you, have an occasional piece of beef, don't worry about it, don't feel guilty, but don't overdo it. It does not appear that if you like to have a nice cut of steak once a week, and you're a heart patient, enjoy it. But don't eat it every day. And this is what I tell my patients. If you're going to Lambeau Field for a tailgate once a year, and it's a big deal, go to your tailgate party and eat a brat. But don't eat brats every week. Don't eat brats every month. Enjoy it on rare occasions. You know it's bad for you. Don't not eat it, but just eat it rarely. There's nothing that you never have to eat. I say to my patients, I want you to eat exceptionally well 95% of the time. And if you do that, you're at the top of your class for the way you eat, because nobody eats perfect. I don't eat perfect. I don't expect anybody of my patients. But if you want to be healthy and you want to live long and prosper, eat healthy 95% of the time, and you're at the top of your class. Okay, how about this? Organic. Oh, come on. How can organic be bad for you? Organic? You guys are tough. Well, once again, it depends. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, sometimes we're not so sure. Fruits and vegetables that have thick skins, impermeable skins, onions, avocados, sweet corn, pineapples, it doesn't matter. The thick skin protects the heart of the food source from sprays or pesticides. It doesn't get into the food source. If you've got something with a thick skin, organic doesn't make a hoot of difference. Now, if you're talking about blueberries, thin skin makes a difference. So, organic can be important to you if you're dealing with thin-skinned fruits and vegetables. So, sometimes organic is good. Sometimes you just pay more. So you just have to keep in mind, what is it that I'm buying? And if it says organic, why am I spending more for this product? If it's got a thick, impermeable skin, you probably don't have to pay more for it. How about this? Coffee is bad for you.
Please don't tell me that.
This would be a problem for me because I love my coffee in the morning. Thank goodness it's false. Okay, a couple things about coffee. By the way, coffee is the #1 beverage in the world now after water. Did you guys know that? It's the most widely drunk beverage in the world after water. It is now identified as a high antioxidant drink. It's been shown to improve athletic performance, particularly in endurance events. 2 8-ounce cups of coffee a day has been shown in some studies, including the Beth Israel Medical Center in downtown Boston, to actually reduce your risk of heart failure by 11%. So in small and moderate quantities, it's actually quite good. Coffee drinkers, for reasons that I don't yet understand, have less basal cell skin cancer if you drink a cup of coffee or two per day. Coffee has been shown to reduce Alzheimer's disease by increasing certain brain hormones that stimulate, brain hormone stimulating factors. So at the moment, as so much in moderation, this actually appears to be quite a healthy drink. So what are the healthy drinks right now? Well, the healthiest things to drink right now that I'm aware of are water, coffee, and tea. Water, coffee, and tea. Some natural fruit drinks are great, but there is some natural sugar components, so you just have to keep track of your calories if you like natural fruit drinks. And I can't think of a single healthy drink that has artificial sugar added to it, or artificial sweeteners. Alzheimer's disease is partially preventable, true or false? Alzheimer's disease may be partially preventable. And the answer to that is, it's true. It's true. It appears now more than ever that the trigger for Alzheimer's disease is atherosclerotic heart disease, artery inflammation, and the same process has been leading to heart attacks and strokes. After 25 years of intensive research, everything is coming back to the metabolic syndrome. The blood vessels, if you take all the blood vessels in the body and put it into one spot, the blood vessels are actually the single largest organ of the body. And I tell people the best way to take care of yourself and your health is to take care of your blood vessels. And although I'm technically a heart doctor, cardiologist, my official title is cardiovascular disease specialist. The best way to take care of yourself is you want to take care of your blood vessels. And Alzheimer's disease is turning out to be an inflammatory disease of the blood vessels. And you're going to be hearing a lot more about that in days to come. Did you know that twice yearly dental cleaning reduces your risk of heart disease because of all the bacteria and inflammation that builds up in your teeth? Those of you who brush and floss regularly, you remember your moms and your grandmothers telling you to brush every day and floss every day. In fact, there's more and more data talking about the fact that there truly are long-term health benefits to that for the insides of your body, not just to save your teeth as we get older. The ingredients of your Diet Coke are healthy. That's no. But listen to this. The color, the caramel color, is actually created from high heat to corn and sugar and cane sugar, and it's been shown to develop a chemical which actually causes lung cancer. Okay, aspartame. Multiple studies have shown that it's an increased cancer risk. I've already told you how diet sodas and the artificial sweeteners fool your brain into thinking it's not getting any calories, you're not feeding it properly, and it artificially enhances your hunger. And the more artificial sweeteners you put in your mouth, the more dull your sweet taste buds in your tongue become, and you literally have to keep putting more and more artificial sweeteners in your mouth to taste the sweetness. I believe the exact same thing happens with salt. The more salt in your mouth, we literally deaden the salt receptors in our tongue. And I know this for a fact because if you develop a bad heart condition and I take you off of your salty diets, for 3 or 4 months you curse me because you say everything tastes like cardboard. And I know if I can get you 4 months out and you go back and you put anything that you used to in your mouth, it is so salty that you can't swallow it. Because our salt, the taste buds in our mouth literally become numb to sugar, and artificial sweeteners have become numb to salt. And the only way we can respond to that is eat more and more of it to get the same psychological satisfaction from the food. And I already told you the answer here. 1 sugary drink a day adds 12 to 15 pounds. So we're going to skip over this one. Oh, here's a good one. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. What do you think about that? It's actually true, but for more reasons than we ever realized. And some of the information is, again, just starting to come out. But there's been studies that show a single apple a day can drop your bad LDL cholesterol levels. And there's chemicals in the peel that actually seem to be combating bad cholesterol. That and the fact that the apple is a phenomenal source of fiber, and it tastes good, we like it. So in fact, that old saying, an apple a day, there actually wasn't, there's turning out to be a lot more to it than we ever actually realized. So, and this is stuff that's just coming out. So, eat your apples. There you go. Another thing on the good list. Okay. As we eat, okay, now let's get back to death by sugar. As we eat, this is what's supposed to happen. Food, as we eat it, think about this. What's the best bite of your favorite food? The first bite. And that's supposed to be that way, because if every bite is as good as the first bite, we don't want to stop eating. In fact, as we eat, the identical food becomes less appetizing. We've evolved that way. That's the way it's supposed to be. As we eat, our stomach expands, sending a message to our brain that says, okay, we're filling up. Slow down and stop. By the way, by the time you're full, stomach full, you've overeaten. So if you're in the habit of eating till you're physically full, you ought to back off. We weren't designed. In the days when you might not have eaten for 3 or 4 days at a time, that was important, but there's no lack of food out there right now. So if you're eating to the point where you're so full it's hard to get up and walk around, you'll probably become a chronic overeater. So you might want to notice that. As the food moves through your GI tract, your metabolism actually increases as it's working to dissolve and digest the food. And as you increase your calorie intake, you get more of the hormone leptin, which feeds back to your brain and says, okay, I'm not so hungry anymore. I can slow down and I can stop. That's the natural cycle of the way things are supposed to go. When we undereat and starve ourselves, metabolism slows down. How many of you have said, I'm going to lose weight, I'm just going to skip meals and I'm not going to eat? It generally doesn't work because our metabolism slows down, and at some point you just get so hungry that your brain goes back and tends to then overeat. And the way I explain to my patients is, there's this little voice in your head where you go a long enough period of time where you don't eat. There's a primitive part of our brain that starts to go, hey, we haven't eaten for a while. Hey, you know what? I think there's no food. There's no food anymore. We're going to starve. We're starving. Oh my God, we're starving. And what happens is the next time you find food, you dive in and you dig in and you overeat. And it's really common for those people who skip lunch because they think I'm going to lose weight, and they work all day, and by the time they go home in the evening, they consistently overeat, because by then the primitive voice in your brain that you don't hear says, oh my God, the food is gone. We're starving. We're going to starve. And then you lay out dinner and it goes, we're not going to die, and you dive in. And that actually happens. So the best way to lose weight is in that middle of the long afternoon, get a little bitty tiny bite of food that has healthy fats and healthy protein. The way we send the message to our brain that food is plentiful, healthy protein, healthy fats, like a little small palmful of mixed nuts or almonds or things like that. A fantastic snack in the middle of the afternoon, and you go home at night and your brain isn't thinking you're starving to death, and it's so much easier to control your appetite. So if you're going to put yourself into long periods of fast, you're going to have to anticipate sitting down and having gorging sessions that are hard to control. Be careful about that. Be careful about that. And the other thing is, when we're not eating, the hormones that tell us that we're hungry continue to build up in your system. Another mechanism causes us to trigger us to overeat. Now that's where some of that eat 6 small meals a day thing comes from. I'm not a big advocate of that because I can't work 6 small meals into a busy day, and I think a lot of you guys can't either. It works for a very tiny percentage of people, but I'd rather have you eating good, nutritious meals, and if you're going to have long periods between meals, get a small little healthy snack so there's some natural feedback to your brain that nobody's starving, that nobody is starving. Okay? Food actually stimulates different parts of our brain, and there are certain foods, and you already know there are certain foods that you love. You see them, and Man, you're like, man, I want a bite of that. Because there are certain parts of our brain that get activated by different foods, and literally there's a positive reinforcement reward system. And it's this sort of stuff that the food companies are taking advantage of. They get that. They know there's certain smells and appearances and tastes that cause a reward signal in your brain, and they take advantage of that with a lot of the unhealthy foods that we buy. And many of these foods, highly palatable, meaning they taste good, energy dense, meaning they're packed with calories, commercial foods literally try to overstimulate those parts of your brains, because you know what? Then you eat more and you buy more. And the food companies know this, and they take advantage of that. Okay, now, with excessive sugar in the bloodstream, the body produces something out of the pancreas called insulin. And insulin is used to get all the excessive sugar out of the bloodstream and back inside of the cells where the sugar is actually used as an energy source. The sugar in your bloodstream doesn't drive anything. The only sugar that's useful to the body is the sugar that gets into the cells where it can be burned for metabolism. Okay? But the problem is, we blast our body with so much sugar that the insulin is always spinning its wheels and it can't ever catch up. And the insulin literally over time becomes less and less effective. Okay? And after a while, the insulin that builds up actually also makes it harder for us to burn fat. So people with type 2 diabetes have had their pancreas spinning the insulin in their system so high and spinning the wheels for so long that the insulin can't clear the blood back into the cells, and we lose our ability to burn fat, and we gain weight. And as we gain weight, the cholesterol goes up, the blood pressure goes up, the cholesterol in your bloodstream shows up, and you have that heart attack like I showed you at the beginning of the talk. And the problem is we get so much continual blasts of sugar all day that our pancreas and our insulin systems stop working effectively, and you develop adult onset diabetes. 22 teaspoons of sugar a day. If I asked you to go home tonight and tomorrow take out a teaspoon and eat 22 teaspoons of white sugar tomorrow, you would get sick. And we do that every single day because it's in the food we buy. Every single day, the average American does that. Okay. Our body wants to burn fat when we're at rest or when we're doing low-level activity. If you're out there sprinting, I've got a 13-year-old junior high schooler who's on the track team, and when she runs the 100-meter sprint, she's only burning sugar. Okay, I can't sprint, but if I go out for my 5-mile jog, I'm burning fat. Okay, what we want to be able to do is continually move our systems back and forth between fat and sugar. And the way we do that is when you're physically active, first off, you have to eat healthy. And stop overwhelming your body with sugar so insulin starts working again. And then when you exercise, you have to alternate between intermittently going fast and going slow. So God love you, those people go out and walk every day. But you know what? Every once in a while when you go out for your daily walk, you got to say for the next block or the next 100 meters, I'm going to walk really fast. And you need to speed up and slow down to keep this system efficient. You need to continue to make this system move back and forth between fat and sugar. How do I know if I'm developing too much insulin that doesn't work? Well, a couple things. Your doctor says, you know what, your sugar counts are high. You might be officially a diabetic. They may use a term called prediabetes. If you're hearing that word, your insulin is not working very well, and you need to look at your diet and your activity and your total body weight. If your triglycerides are high or your good HDL cholesterol is low, that's called the metabolic syndrome. You're developing insulin that's not working very well. You're on that slippery slope we've been talking about. And the other fast way to determine if you're how well you're doing with insulin is, what's your waistline? What was your waistline 5 years ago? What was your waistline 10 years ago? If your waistline is increasing, your insulin effectiveness is going down. So I've given you 3 very simple ways to determine, in general, how well does my insulin work. And if you already know you're a diabetic, your insulin doesn't work. Okay, so we get hungry, our glucose supplies, the bloodstream, the sugar drops. Our brains, by the way, have to run on sugar. with insulin resistance, the bloodstream is always full of sugar, but the sugar can't get into the brain. So the brain is constantly saying, we don't have any sugar. I gotta have sugar for my brain to work. When your insulin doesn't work, your bloodstream is packed with sugar, but it can't get to your brain. So your brain continually says, no sugar, we gotta eat more sugar. We don't have enough sugar in our diet. And in fact, that's occurring at a time when your body is sugar overloaded. We have to keep the insulin working properly to be able to maintain good health. We're just about done here. Okay. We talked about how do you exercise. First off, you can't sprint away excess weight. You can't sprint away. Insulin doesn't work. Okay? To get fat burning, you have to be exercising at low to moderate levels. We burn sugar when we exercise at very vigorous levels. But you want both the sugar system and the fat system to work. You gotta intermittently speed up and slow down when you exercise. Nowadays, the kids have that all figured out. The young athletes, they call that interval training. And for that, for you guys, that just might mean that on your stationary bike, 1 minute out of 5, you're just gonna pedal faster, or turn the resistance up, or on your walk or your treadmill. Every once in a while, you're just gonna, every so many minutes, you're just gonna raise it up a degree or two and walk up a slight incline. Don't be afraid to huff and puff a little bit. That's what I mean by increasing the intensity once in a while. Light weights increases your metabolism and increases weight burning, and you also get some muscle tone. Most people incorporate small hand weights into their exercises like it because you feel better, you get stronger, and you can change your body shape that makes it look like you're working out. Usually people start to notice that after a while. So light weights, little hand weights are actually quite good for you to do. And there's no age where you're too old to do simple light weight training. And if you're not sure how to do that, talk to the people at the senior center. Talk to people about that at the Health and Fitness Center. Or come and join Phase 3 Cardiac Rehab for a session if you want. All those things are available to you through your doctors here in Wapaka. But you have to be able to maintain your body shifting back and forth from sugar to fat. All right, so how do we lose weight? Okay. For the most part, get away from the stuff you currently eat too much of. In general, if you're eating a lot of bad foods, it's time to get rid of them. Start with simple sugar foods. The big 3, breads, potatoes, and pastas in general. The big 3 in Wisconsin. A diet is not something you go on for 6 weeks to try to crash course lose weight. A diet in this means, what am I going to eat long term for months and for years? So make changes that you can live with. Everybody can crash course diet for a month and lose weight. But then the second we get to a goal, we go back to our old habits. That's why the grapefruit diet worked. That's why, all these crazy diets, the South Beach diet. Anybody can go on a diet. I don't advocate diets. I advocate slow, gradual, permanent, lifelong changes. Make healthy decisions. Eat and prepare more foods at home so you know exactly what's in them. Minimize salt and sugar. Eat foods as close to the original source as possible. Focus on healthy proteins, fiber-rich fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables are full of complex carbohydrates. You don't need simple sugar foods to be a successful, healthy person. And start working on identifying where the simple sugar foods come from and how to get rid of them. Thank you.
A wonderful talk. We'll have a few questions now, and then I have to tell you after that, pick up all that healthy foods that people carrots, cauliflower, broccoli, and dried apricots. No, you can't move them. And take it with you. Fire away with the question.
If our audience was not in their 60s and 70s, but in our 20s, 30s, and 40s, can you deliver the same message and have it resonate with your audience?
We're trying. We've started an initiative in the Fox Cities. Our 10-year goal is to have the population of the Fox Cities drop 10% of their body weight in 10 years. And we've got a coalition of the hospital systems, the University of Wisconsin, the city governments, public health people, all the major corporations have come together, and we've been meeting now for 6 months, and we're going to initiate a plan that will start in the schools and go right up to the senior centers to try to get this exact information out. But sometimes with the kids, it's not so easy. You know, the kids' school lunches have gotten more healthy, the Michelle Obama plan, and if you go to most grade schools and junior highs now, the kids get healthy food on their lunch trays, they just don't eat it. It has to start at home. And if you guys have children or grandchildren, it starts in the home, and you guys can have an impact on the young adults and the young teenagers and children in your lives. You want to do them a great service, make sure they don't smoke, and teach them how to eat healthy.
You did mention alcohol, red wine, other alcohol drinks. Is that sugar content type stuff?
Alcohol is a carbohydrate-based, long-chain carbohydrate. I tell my patients to think of it as liquid fat only because it's calorie dense. So if you ask the typical person to count their calories, they don't count alcohol in their content and when they count. It's almost universal. It's been proven that for men, a single glass or two of wine per day is heart healthy. For women, 1, generally because men are bigger than women. Okay, very healthy for you, for the heart. A general alcohol drink has been shown to reduce your risk of dying at a young age. We don't understand why, compared to someone who never drinks versus a heavy drinker. Okay? I tell my patients, if you don't drink, don't start. But if you do drink, drink in moderation, don't drive. And if you're going to drink, drink a drink that's going to be good for your heart, which is wine. And right now, there's no reason to think white should be any different than red, because it all comes, it's chemicals in the grape skin that seem to give you the benefit.
I was reading on the grocery store the other day, there was a big sign, I don't remember what product, it said, no high fructose corn syrup. And the first ingredient on it was fructose corn syrup. So what's the difference between high fructose corn syrup and fructose corn syrup?
Read the labels. Corn syrup is corn syrup. You know, and if anybody here is a corn farmer, I'm not trying to get down on you, but I'll tell you what, corn syrup is just one of the multiple products that's killing Americans. It's just killing Americans. Yeah.
Is it okay to eat a lot of salt if you're sweating?
Yeah. Now, there's times when we need salt and electrolyte replacement. If you're out chopping wood on a hot, humid summer day in Wisconsin, you better be replacing electrolytes and getting a little bit of, carbohydrates in your diet. But the problem is we overdo it. We overdo it. That's the problem. Yeah, all the way in the back.
Is it good and bad spices?
I'm here to tell you to cut back on salt and sugar. Okay. I'm not aware of others. There's nothing else like it in our diet today, which is making us sick. So I say to people go, "My God, I can't eat salt. What am I going to do?" And I go, "Well, go to the grocery store and realize that there's 600 other spices that you've never tried. And those of you who cook know there's some phenomenally great spices out there, but the typical American never touches them." But in general, I think the answer to that is no. But now that I've said that, tomorrow the headlines of the paper will be that you're gonna die with curry. I don't know. So you got to take this and no pun intended, take that with a grain of salt. Yeah.
I love whole milk. Can I drink whole milk?
Of course you can. You know what? I'm going to write a book someday, a diet book, and I'm going to be famous and make $1 million, and Oprah is going to put on. I'm going to steal it from my grandmother, and it's going to be called the moderation diet. And you know what? We've forgotten about the moderation that we all grew up and lived with. Moderation. There's nothing moderation about 22 teaspoons of sugar a day. There's nothing moderation about 6,000 milligrams of salt per day. That's not moderation. There's nothing wrong with milk, but don't drink 3 gallons a day.
We'll have to end the questions from the audience now, but please come up and